Hello guys, this is Will from Like Lion. This is gonna be our last lecture, and this is also the second part to our Bitcoin blockchain lecture. And first lecture, Natasha introduced what blockchain is and some useful application, and Justin was implementing the code, and then we were able to create the blockchain of our own. And that was really simple. And that was a really tiny blockchain. But then we have some flaws there. First flaw is that it only runs in our own machine, our own computer. So it can't be distributed. And second flaw is that that block could be added to the chain as fast as our own computer could do that. So we used list object in Python, and our computer could create a Python object and add it to the list, and that's how fast our block is added to our chain. So this isn't a problem when you're just gonna play around with that simple blockchain. But then to make it an actual cryptocurrency, we need to control the amount of block that can be added to our blockchain. So we're gonna implement that. But this part of lecture, this is the code that we're gonna go over. This is really complex, and this is beyond the scope of our understanding. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna run down each like the chunk of the code so that you wouldn't have to do it line by line, just like Justin's lecture. It's too hard, so just bear with us. I'll try to be as thorough as possible when explaining these stuffs. So yeah, let's do this. So this part of the code, I think Justin was explaining, and it was pretty clear. And this part, we're just adding some library that we're gonna use later on. Wait. So I'm gonna be posting this code online so that you could just run it and try it yourself. So that yeah, just listen to the lecture and you could just understand what the chunks of codes are doing. So you wouldn't have to like write it down every time I write something. So yeah, don't do that. I'll make sure I'll post this code online so that you could just try to run it and make sure that we've created our first blockchain that's distributable, and we could um, implement the speed that the chain is getting, our block is getting added to our blockchain, and everything else like network, node, all that stuff. Okay, this is gonna be hard. So until this part was explained, and then for this, we are this is a random address of the owner. It's us of our network. I think we're gonna use this later on, and this is a complete empty list. This is our node, our network's blockchain copy. And this is a list of transactions. So the data that we're working on, what kind of data it's in there, it's up to you. But then this is where we're gonna store our data, our transaction. And this is peers. So this is someone else's. And we're make sure that we're gonna be able to communicate with this transaction and of our own. And this is simply a Boolean object, and we're gonna be deciding if we're gonna mine it or not based on this, and we're gonna use this later on our code. Okay, so this whole chunk of code is adding transaction. You can see transaction here to our blockchain network, which is called a node. So we have node here. So node is a blockchain network, and we're creating a server, a HTTP server, so that any user can let our network know that a new transaction has occurred. So this is just telling us that, oh, someone else is adding that transaction. And so that transaction is transmitted in JSON format. JSON, this is a type of format that you should be familiar when you were with us last quarter. And our network will accept this data in post request. Um, so this is requesting, and our network is accepting this transaction as a post request. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So this is our JSON format. This is what we're gonna look at. This is what the JSON format will look like. So we have the from and to and how much coin that we're sending. So who is sending to who, how many, how much. And after this is successful, we get the transaction properly. We're gonna have this message shown to the user that the transaction submission is successful. So by doing this, we have a record of users when they send our blockchain to each other. So someone got this coin to someone else, and this is done publicly, and these kind of transactions will be shown by everyone, which is also the purpose of blockchain. It's public and it's open to everyone. We could see all the transactions inside. Yeah, so this is making sure that that's happening. And then we're gonna skip over these 3 chunks of code, and we're gonna come back to this after. And from this on, so we're gonna explain these all chunks together. This is for the mining of our block, and we should so you should know what mining is, and the mining process shouldn't be too easy or too hard, because if it's too easy, then there's going to be too many blockchains that are created, and that will have no value. And it can't be too hard, because then it's going to make it too expensive, and that's not what we want. So the first part is called proof of work, and this is an algorithm that our computer performed a certain task, a certain amount of work, and if our computer goes through this algorithm, we are rewarded with a brand new Bitcoin for the miner. So this is what is making sure that, oh yeah, you did it right, so we're gonna reward you with the Bitcoin. And our proof of work, our computer has to increment a number, so 1 plus 1, until the number is divisible by 9. So this is what that's doing. This is giving us the remainder. So 0 means that it's divisible by 9. And the proof number of the last block. So this is last block. And after this part is done, our miner can send the blockchain to someone else so that it's getting distributed. So that person will send it to someone else, and now it's public and all distributable. So Um, okay. So this part is very hard, kind of complicated. And yeah, this is just making sure that we have the data needed to create the new block. And this part, minds block, this is make sure that we create the new block. This is looking for the proof of work so that so our computer will hang here until a new proof of work is found. And once we find the proper proof of work, we know that we can mine a block, and then we could reward the miner with the blockchain. Yeah. So I can't go as far as like um, doing line by line. Hope this helps you. Okay. So um, after this part is done, we could control the number of blocks mined in a time period because we could only mine after this proof of work is valid. And then, yeah, we can issue new coins so that that coins can be sent to someone else. However, before we go on to this part, we are only doing this in our own computer. So we need something called node network so that all transactions are equal in all network. And um, uh, so this three chunk will make sure that the same chain is on every network. And we're making sure that each node, each network is telling its version of chain like to the other people and allow them to receive the transaction and the chain to their network so that all networks have the same chain and transactions. So each node has to verify that the other chain, the other chain from other network, comes to agreement, and this is called consensus algorithm right here. So our consensus algorithm, once again, will make sure that um, it's verifying other nodes so that all networks have the same transaction. Yeah, okay. And then um, our consensus algorithm here is essentially doing a simple algorithm of if, okay, so what we're doing here is a node, if the chain is different from another, like another chain, so if it's different, then we're gonna keep the longest chain and then we're gonna discard all the shorter chains. So yeah, if there's no conflict between the chains in our network, then we're just gonna carry on. But then if the chain is different from one another, then the longest chain in the network stays and all shorter chains will be deleted. Yeah, so this part, in order to implement this part, we need these two parts. And this is essentially mining our block again. And wait, yeah. So this will make sure that our networks have the same chains. I think I'm repeating myself too much, but yeah, this is what we're doing here. Oh, and yeah, that's it. That's it for the coding part. So after you just copy and paste all this code onto your text editor and run this, we're gonna have our previous blockchain a little bigger and distributable, and we could implement how hard it is to mine and how it's going to be transmitted. It's how it's going to transmit our transactions into our network and compare that to others network, and making sure that we have all the same transactions, all the same data in our network. So this is how to run this code. I add it as a comment. So first, you need to install this server framework called Flask. So before run this, you have to have this Flask installed. So what you could do is you could open up terminal and type in pip install Flask. So mine has it already installed. If you haven't installed it before, you should. And then once this is done, you have to install this thing called curl. And for me, we've downloaded Ruby and Homebrew from last quarter. So I just used our Ruby code right here. I found this on the internet, and I use this code after this. So these two codes. But then if you don't have the Ruby and Homebrew installed in your computer, then I'm sure there's a better way to install this. So just type in how to install curl in Google and you'll be able to install this. You have to have these two installed before we could run this. So after this, we're just gonna run this file. Hope you know how to run a Python file by now. So just go to Python, type in Python, and this is the name of the file that I use. So bitcoin.py. And yeah, there we go. So it's running on our own network right here. And it says, do not use the development server in a production environment. Just ignore this. And if you have this, what is it? If you have this part, like these 6 lines showing up, then you're good to go. If not, you should ask the admin or try to install this properly, or make sure that you have copied and paste all the code here. So next thing, we're gonna create our own transaction so that it can be copied to our own network. And this is where our curl is going to get, it's going to be used. So these 3 lines, except for these hashtags, which is for just commenting. So we already have a terminal. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna open up another terminal. Oh, wait, yeah, sorry. New window, and then you're just gonna copy these 3 codes. Wait, I don't want the hashtag, so remove the hashtag for now, and then copy these 3 codes, and then type in your terminal. And if it says transaction submission successful, you're good to go. Your transaction has been submitted. And then we're gonna mine a new block so that this transaction gets into our Bitcoin. So just copy this code without the hashtag again. And then, yeah, there we go. So we have our first transaction with the timestamp. This is today, right now. And then the proof of work is 18. So this is divisible by 9. And this is also, as you could see in the code right here. So this proof of work algorithm has been passed. And our transaction is, so I used random letters. So sender to someone and the amount of coin. So that's all implemented here as transaction. And this is also making transaction from network to our own. This is our own address. So we're sharing this to our network. And this is the hash. We know what hash is from last lecture, right? So I guess since this part of the lecture is essentially copying code and making sure it runs in your own computer. If you want more practice and see in more detail, I think it's Justin lecture that's gonna be more helpful in terms of knowing what we're doing. But this part of code, this all chunks of code is beyond the scope of what we're trying to teach you guys. So just make sure that this part of the code is running, and I guess you're good to go. So yeah, from next lecture, we're gonna actually be working on our project. So so I guess not having this completely understood is fine for now, unless you want to do a project on blockchain. Then we're gonna delve into little line by line code here. But then if you're not planning to do blockchain, we're good to go. Yeah, that's the end of my lecture, and see you guys in class. How do I pause this? Oh my.